started with how can teachers use the station rotation and small group instruction? How can they do this in person and particularly to this year virtually? Many teachers have been overwhelmed with this school year being so different due to the pandemic. So I'm sure as I entered the professional development that all these teachers were wondering the same things and more. Some things they might be thinking about are, how can I differentiate online? How can I continue to use best practices in my virtual classroom, such as student choice, differentiation, and small group instruction? And most importantly, how can I keep my students engaged for hours online? All of these questions are great questions, and they're questions that I'm constantly asking myself as a special education teacher too. So I'm hoping that this professional development helps you feel a bit more comfortable with the practice of using stations for small group instruction, particularly in mathematics and language arts, and also in the virtual world. What is the station rotation model? This model allows the teachers to devise small groups of students within the class. During this time, at least one station is computer-based. The teacher can change groups daily or have students grouped by learning, need, or strength, or style. So there's many variations of what the station rotation model can look like in your setting. And again, it'll look different depending on what grade level you teach. However, one things that do stay the same is that it's small groups of students. One station should be computer-based, and the teacher has flexibility within making student groups. Why do teachers believe in station rotation? What are the benefits? What are they getting from it? So why do teachers want to use this model? I've been using this model for quite some time. One of the main reasons why I use this model is because as a special education teacher, I have so many levels of students in my classroom. So it is a way for me to be able to meet their academic needs. But why do other teachers want to use this model? Well, it allows for teachers to use their data to group their students and then to differentiate the work in that group. Teachers can teach concepts in small groups, which is best practice always. This allows for more support and, even more importantly, more feedback. It encourages collaboration between students. It's very engaging. Students can practice skills in a variety of ways, such as independently, with peers, small groups, with the teacher, online, or paper and pencil. Lots of student choice is given. This slide pretty much outlines some research that I found on this station rotation model, and I think it's important that when we're learning things new and when leaders want to motivate staff and teachers to believe in a change or believe in an opportunity for improvement, that they use research to support their decisions and they are transparent about what the research says. So I highlighted some key sentences from the research that I read. However, I attached this article that you can read on your own. So one highlight that I found was interesting was compared to teachers, compared to non-rotation teachers, compared to those who did use the station rotation, reported higher levels of differentiated instruction, more availability of data to drive decision making, and higher quality digital curriculum. This was found in the American Institute for Research, and I did link the article in this presentation. I also read that station rotation teachers are also reported receiving more supports to provide personal learning to students, while non-station rotation teachers reported more challenges. So it's always easier to support students in a smaller group than it is in a larger group. It transfers a traditional theory-based classroom into a virtually enriched hands-on workshop. And this is something that is so vital for the world that we live in today. In a personalized learning approach, educators incorporate student-specific needs, their talents, their strengths into their instruction, and educators are able to do that when the groups are smaller and when students are engaged and rotating through the stations you have planned. Although classroom management can be a challenge with this, teachers felt that the use of station rotation led to fewer behavioral disruptions, which makes sense because students are engaged, they're up and moving, there's more choice, and they are given the correct, effective support that is needed. So there are various ways to structure your station rotation. So I just pulled a few images that I thought would work for staff. Everybody organizes their classroom and their management style is different. So the next few slides are different ways that you can organize your groups. So you can have 3 groups, and each group could be at a station for about 30 minutes, and then they rotate through. So using like a picture chart like this would really be helpful. You could see for group 1, they go to the computer station. The next station is like a collaborative station where they're working with a peer. And then lastly is the teacher-led station. And if you look at group 2, they're at the teacher-led station first, and then the computer station, and then the collaborative station, and so on for group 3. This image allows you to see it more like a circle or a wheel. A lot of us probably have taught learning centers this way. So students begin with online instruction, then they go to the teacher instruction, then they go to the collaborative instruction, and they keep rotating through. And when they are at the collaborative station and the online instruction, there could be a paraprofessional that supports learning, supports behavior, while the teacher is leading instruction. And finally, a list for each group makes sense too. Once the students identify which group that they're in, they can follow number 1, 2, and 3, and then rotate through those stations in that manner. So now that you understand what station rotation model looks like and what are some benefits of it, and some research that supports it based off of teachers that have actually participated in this model, maybe you're thinking, how can you plan your stations for the beginning of the school year? Or how can you jump into this if it's the middle of the school year? And I'm going to lead you through 4 basic steps. The 4 basic steps that I shared with my colleagues are: 1, use a backwards plan. So you need to think about what you want your students to learn. So if this is a math lesson, maybe you're thinking, what is my objective? What are my goals? What are my essential questions? What do I want them to know by the end of the lesson or the end of the week, however you structure your lesson plans? What do I want them to be able to do? Step 2 is virtual tools. What tools do you have in order for your students to learn virtually, and what skills do they need to use those tools? So if your class uses Google Slides and you want them to be able to create a Google slide about something that they're reading, let's just say, do they know how to use copy and paste? Do they know how to use text boxes? Do they know how to type? Do they know how to insert an image? These are all things that you need to think about before you release the online portion of station rotation. Step 3 is the setup. How many stations will you have? what type of learning will take place at each station, and what routines do you need to put into place. So what I typically do for step 3 is I work on teaching one station to my students per week. Once I start adjusting to more academics in the beginning of the year. So if I want them all to learn how to do the online station, I'll teach them one way to practice skills online. I'm thinking about mathematics right now. So I'm thinking about teaching my students how to log into Prodigy, which is a digital platform we use in my school district, to reinforce skills being taught. Or maybe you use IXL, very similar. How to log on, we'll work on some online activities together for a whole week long so that they know how to log in, sign in, navigate the platform, complete their assignments. They know how to behave with a Chromebook or any type of device you're using. They know what the classroom looks like and sounds like when that station is happening. I would have all of the children practice this station. And then the following week, I would have all of the children practice the collaborative station. And I would teach them all the different things that I want them to be doing in the collaborative station. Playing math games, solving a math puzzle. And we would work on that all together. And then maybe the third week, I would have half of the class work on the online games, half of the class work on the collaborative station. And then we would do that for a week. So I would say the whole rollout for the setup, done right, will take about a month. And as you're rolling this out, you're also teaching new skills. You're teaching new skills. That's your lesson. That's your whole group lesson. Step 4 is accountability. So how will you hold your students accountable at each station? Will you have an exit slip? Will you have a self-reflection tool? That is decided by you, but a way that you can determine that students are held accountable when they're not with you is vital to the success of station rotation. I want to give you more descriptions of what these stations look like. I know you've heard me say independent or online station. I've mentioned collaborative and teacher-led. So let's look closely at each one on the next couple slides. First, let's take a look at the independent work station or the individual online station. So in this station, you are going to select work that your students can do independently. This station is really to reinforce concepts that were previously taught, okay, reinforce skills. The teacher can also provide a video introducing the assignment or directions. Make sure that there's some sort of formative assessment that's included, such as a Google form or a self-reflection or an exit ticket. The collaborative, partner, or support station is when students work together. Students can work, if it's virtual, in a breakout room or in your classroom collaboratively. This is a great station for the paraprofessional to lead, and collaborative tools like Google Docs work great at this station or slides. Some other virtual tools are Padlet and Flipgrid. Finally, this third station is the teacher-facilitated station. This is where small groups of students, based on data, work with the teacher, and this is where the work is differentiated. This is where you might be able to fill in gaps in their learning, teach new skills, and also reteach new skills. Best teaching practice are utilized during this station, such as clarifying questions and checking for understanding. So I mentioned that this professional development was really to focus on elementary and primary teachers in my school district. It also focused on readers workshop and math workshop. Both models are used in my district currently. So I thought it would be very key to give teachers some practical examples of what these stations can be. And these ideas are really focused on programs and tools that my school district uses. So it could look different in every school district, also in every grade level. So what could it look like in readers workshop or reading workshop after a whole class mini lesson? Well, the teacher station would be guided reading, strategy groups, book clubs, word work, using a digital platform called Kids, Reading A to Z, Units of Study, Words Their Way, Foundations, or Epic. These are all programs that we use in the district where I teach. The online station is where students are working independently, and students can be on Epic books, they could be listening or reading a story, they could be doing digital work, word work, they could be doing digital grammar work, they could be doing Kids, they could be responding to reading using digital platforms like Google Slides or Docs. They could do an online reading response notebook. Other platforms are readworks.org and Common Lit. Lastly, the collaborative station or the support station is where your students will be working together. So maybe they're working on a book project or a Google Slide or a research project, literacy games. Again, this is where you can utilize your paras to reteach concepts and review concepts that were already taught. So that's what readers workshop could look like using this model. What could math workshop look like after a whole class mini lesson, or maybe your number sense routine or calendar math as well? So that would be done whole group. So then once you break out into your stations, the teacher station could be reteaching your lesson, enriching your lesson based on data from the mini lesson. This is where there's lots and lots of differentiation, and we use something called brainingcamp.com. It's a website of online manipulatives that are fantastic for teaching new math concepts. The online station could be online digital tools and games such as Prodigy, Math Facts, Braining Camp, Flipgrid, or assignments after watching the teacher video using Google Slides. The collaborative station could be projects, math games, and again, this is where the paraprofessional could be used to support skills that need to be reinforced or retaught or reviewed. Okay, so this is where we kind of broke at the actual training, where we kind of took some time to either work with our grade level teams and or independently. I gave staff a bunch of resources to click through. I gave 3 articles. One of the articles is where I found the research that was on the slide from the beginning of the presentation. So I linked them right here. So if you just open up you click on each link, you can open them and take a look at them. And then also I gave them the opportunity to watch and listen to a video of what station rotation looks like in action. I think it's so important that when you're training teachers and you're motivating them to make a change could be scary, to seeing what it looks like in action makes it so much more practical. It allows them to envision what their classroom could look like, and it gives them the momentum to want to make this change and want to do what's best for their students. So it's very, very motivating. So I always like to have a video in there of what it looks like, or supply some student work would be another great thing you could do. So we took about 15 minutes and had a discussion. After the discussion, I moved on to this slide, which is about transitioning. So the station rotation model, although is extremely effective and has a lot of benefits, it can be a challenge because it's a lot of classroom management and it's a lot of planning and prepping so that your students know exactly what they need to be doing when they're not with you, so that you can be successful at teaching your lesson to your station and your students can be successful in what they're doing. So transitioning could be a time that behaviors arise. So transitioning is something that I really wanted to share with staff and teachers about my own experiences. So one thing that's really important is make sure students know your schedule, and potentially that's their schedule, right? Make sure they know which stations they're going to, make it visible and clear in the classroom, set up some sort of chart that they rotate through, a list, something that they're comfortable with. Pick and set a time for each station and use a timer and stick to it. You want your stations to be 20 minutes long. Start your timer immediately when you start teaching, and when that timer goes off, you must wrap it up so that you can make sure that all of your students rotate through all of the stations. Start off small and build up to promote stamina, and this is what I was sharing about how you set it up in the beginning. Really teach and model those stations so that students know exactly what is expected. Make sure you check in to discuss what worked well and what they need to work on. Lots of self-reflection, not only during the beginning phases of this, but throughout the whole time that you're implementing station rotation. Start with a check-in, end with a check-in. Each week, fill in a self-reflection form each day if you have time for it. Giving students a voice and just hearing their concerns, their strengths, the areas that they need to improve on will really help you plan better. Use formative assessment data at each station that you are not leading. So think of a way that you will hold them accountable. Here are some more tips. Model routines, heavily scaffold their learning. Switch up the groups to keep the students engaged. Reflect on routines and behaviors daily. Post a schedule and give yourself permission to not grade everything that they do. Mix it up, change your stations, use self-reflection tools and a formative assessment to hold your students accountable. Have strategies for transitions. I use a timer, so my timer rings. My students know that that's time to transition. Test it out. Give yourself a chance to learn as you go, and have something in place for early finishers. So at the end of the professional development, I did give teachers time to start planning. At this point, they worked with their grade level teams to start planning some stations for the school year. Right at the end, however, I did give them a teacher survey to rate and describe their experience at the professional development training. All of the survey results did go to the leaders in my school district, and they use this survey to better plan professional development. They use the survey to see what areas still need more development, what areas don't need more development. But these were the questions that were asked on the survey. So question number 1 said, do you feel as though the presenter of this workshop was knowledgeable on the subject matter? Do you feel as though you were given practical examples, resources, and tools to begin implementing this model in your classroom? What's your biggest takeaway from this professional development? What is one way this workshop can improve if implemented again to another audience? Do you feel as though this workshop aligns closely to our district mission and goals? And would you be interested in a follow-up session? If yes, what would you like to focus on? And on my last slide here, I included my references. So here are the articles that I shared with staff and the research that I shared with you in the beginning of my presentation. And this is the end of my original contribution for my Capstone Experience course for educational leadership. Thank you so much. You can also find this posted on YouTube.